about issues related to victims, assisting them, and how different organizations are working together to provide services and get you, the general public, involved in that. And joining me today is the president of the California District Attorneys Association, Greg Totten. Thank you very much for joining us.
Delighted to be here with you.
And Mike Ramos, who's the DA from Ventura County.
San Bernardino.
I'm sorry, San Bernardino.
Right.
You're with Ventura
Right.
County. Both district attorneys and both very much advocates for victims' rights and making sure the victims are taken care of in the process of dealing with the court cases and that type of thing. So here at the Sheraton today, tell us just real briefly what's going on behind us.
Well, every year here in the state of California, district attorneys handle cases that involve about 200,000 victims of violent crime. And prosecutors in California are the primary provider of victim services, and virtually all district attorneys' offices have victim service programs. And today's conference is really about those victim services and the delivery of rights under state law. In California, we have a constitutional law that protects victims. And so we're having really the first of its kind statewide summit that involves prosecutors, victim service providers, law enforcement, a number of community-based organizations to really talk about those services and to develop a strategic plan for the future.
That's great, and we obviously the highest level of government here. The governor was just here.
Correct.
Talked about the importance of victim services and the integration with district attorneys and all of the programs that are available. Mike, tell us from your perspective from the Victims Compensation Claims Board, what exactly is their involvement and your involvement in this? You were also the previous president of the
Sure.
California District Attorneys Association.
Sure, and we have our executive director here as well from the Victims Compensation Board, and I was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2004 on that board, and we oversee millions of dollars that go out to victims of crime all across the state of California. I think last year we spent about $95 million to assist victims for counseling, funeral costs, lost wages, sometimes with the domestic violence type victims, helping move them to a safe location. But the beautiful thing about the restitution fund, it is all paid for by those people committing the crimes on restitution orders throughout the state of California. So one of the things that inspires us here is to see all these services and to talk about victims' rights, because then we go back as DAs and we tell our prosecutors, look, you've got to get the restitution orders. You really have to make sure that you follow through on post-conviction for victims as well. So it's a passion that Greg and I have, and so this is an excellent conference to, again, not only give us some more resources. I'm learning new things myself, but especially with realignment and AB 109, but to take what we already have in place and to better utilize it for victims.
So who are some of the groups that are here?
Well, first of all, we have the directors of our victim services programs in large number here. We have actual advocates, people that are trained in the helping profession, that are dealing with those broken and suffering people that walk through our doors after being victimized. We also have a number of community-based organizations. We have the Coalition Against Family Violence. We have rape crisis program operators, and we're all here working together to ensure that we provide more meaningful, more comprehensive services to victims. When I began as a prosecutor 30 years ago, when a victim came through the door, they were just treated as a witness. They were treated as a very small cog in the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, all too often, those victims were re-victimized by a system that was indifferent to what they had experienced. Today, we have really come light years beyond that, thanks to good policy at the state level, thanks to committed victim advocates who really care about the people they serve. We are now taking victims and walking with them arm in arm through that criminal justice process to provide them a comprehensive level of services that is going to permit them, even though they will never be the same, it's going to at least enable them to be bold and to go on and live life fully. And that, at the end of the day, is what we want for crime victims and crime victim survivors. The most important thing we do, certainly, is go to court and convict the person who hurt them and get an appropriate sentence. And they're a vital part of that. But we're looking at victims now in a much broader perspective than we did before.
And there's a lot of people don't know about the claims board, or even
Right.
if there are services, maybe some victims may even be hesitant to even make a report or get involved because they're afraid, oh, I'm going to have to testify, I don't know who's going to help me.
Right, you're absolutely right. And we did a good job the last 2 years of marketing, actually, our services that we could provide for victims. Even some of those victims that perhaps there's not enough evidence to file the case, we can still support those victims of crime. So we've gone out, we've even put our phone number on billboards, to let victims know. Now we have, under Marcy's law, we have cards that police officers carry with them to give victims so they know what their rights are. So that's an ongoing process, but as Greg said, I think we've come light years ahead on what we're doing. And then, of course, a lot of the folks in this conference are victim advocates. I mean, we have victim services department, and I call them our angels. I mean, without them, we'd go backwards. They walk with our victims through court, before the process, during the process, after the process, and just do a tremendous job.
Yeah, Greg, that's an interesting point he makes too, is that it's not just the victims that are involved, but you have advocate organizations.
Correct.
And I'm sure we have folks that are maybe watching this are saying, well, I'm not involved, I haven't been the victim of a crime, but is there anything I can do to help? What can I help you to do?
There's a lot that can be done to help, and a lot we can convey to your viewers. First of all, we depend upon volunteers. Our victim services program, we probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 hours every month of volunteers helping us deal with victims. The other aspect of this is I can guarantee you that you have viewers watching this program literally as we speak that have been victims of crime, that are embarrassed about their victimization, that are hesitant to come forward. And the message we want to send to all of those individuals is the best thing you can do for yourself, the best thing you can do for your family is come forward. There are police officers, there are prosecutors, there are victim advocates that genuinely care about you and want to help you. And we need you to come forward and tell us about what happened.
We're taking another step. One of my deputy DAs, I was surprised to see her here, and she, in my county, is working with the Catholic Diocese. And the church is really good about supporting defendants or people in prison and how can we help them rehabilitate. But we've forgotten about the victims, and she has been pushing that. So we are now coming up with a protocol and a plan through the church how to help victims so they get the services even after the court's done, after the crime's done, to support them in a community-based support, not just a government support.
That's great. I think it's a complete network of things that have to happen. It's not just one organization or another, or you're not on your own. It's really just a network of folks, and that's what's happening here with this conference. Your co-sponsor here is the California Crime Victims Assistance Association, and you've got other organizations here that support this. So, we're glad to see it, and we're glad that you joined us here today to give us some insight on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions about as we go through this process, we're going to have some folks come on that are from the different programs talking about exactly what it is that is going on here, how you can get involved, and we're also taking your questions. So if you want to send a question to us, you can do so by clicking at the bottom. It says Ask a Question. Just click there, or you can email us questions@calema.ca.gov. Plus, we're also on Twitter. So we have a hashtag. It's CalEMALive. And this is obviously a feed from the California Emergency Management Association, our communications unit, but it's a public service program to help better educate you. We're also at CalEMA if you're on Twitter as well, so get involved. So what we're going to do next is show a video from a march that occurred about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with crime victims at the Capitol, and there's some sound from the governor and some other folks involved in the process. This was a very important march for people to just become more aware of what's going on with crime victims. So let's roll that tape.
As we observe California National Crime Victims' Rights Month.
It's a privilege to be here today to honor the strength and the voice of the victims that are going to share their stories with us. Those are the stories that provide our team the inspiration, the strength, the motivation, and the dedication and the compassion that our staff has in serving the victims of crime and their families.
Not about my story. My rape is merely one of millions. Most stories remain untold.
We stand united, shoulder to shoulder.
Evil has affected you in so many profound ways, but justice is also affecting you, and through your solidarity, you can find the resources, the spiritual energy to overcome. Yes, you may never forget. Yes, the pain may never entirely go away. But just as in baptism itself, we renew ourselves not by our will, but by the grace of God, and I invoke that today as we ask to overcome this horrible pain that you've all experienced. We will overcome. It will be better. And while evil will not be overcome entirely in this life, we do not have to be overcome by it. And that's what we celebrate and recognize today. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. That video, very inspiring, gave you a real insight as to the amount of advocacy going on here in California, especially at the Capitol, with the governor involved and all the different groups that are involved in the process of helping victims, advocating for them, and providing services to those families and loved ones and all of those affected by crime in California and really just anywhere, being able to provide services to them. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Again, we'd love for you to become involved in the conversation. So we're on Twitter at CalEMA. We're also, we have a hashtag, it's CalEMA Live. And if you're watching this, not live for us, but on tape, you can still send us a question and we'll have that answered for you. It's at questions@calema.ca.gov. So joining me is Sally Hencken with the California Emergency Management Agency and Catherine Duggan with the California Crime Victims Assistance Association. Am I right? Okay, I have to get that. Make sure I get that right. So let's start with you, Sally. Just tell us specifically about just the importance of victims. It's obvious, you know, we want to help victims, but it's a complicated process, and it's something that in the past has been overlooked, and so it's important that these type of events occur to provide awareness and get people focused in the right direction. So if you can kind of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. The last 2 days' events have come to fruition as of a grant. The California Emergency Management Agency is the granting agency for federal funds to victim service programs. Therefore, the grant went to the California Crime Victim Assistance Association in partnership with California District Attorneys Association. And it was through their vision to bring the advocates, the prosecutors, law enforcement, our unserved population programs all together to create this vision for California, which I would like Catherine in a moment to expand
absolutely.
on. Times are tough financially on the federal level. The funds aren't coming in from the fines and penalties levied against criminals to support our programs. So how do we maximize? How do we leverage our resources? So the conference the past 2 days really brings us its relative information on the status of victim services in California and how we can move ahead in the next 10 years.
It's a really important conference. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about just the networking itself. And Catherine, you were very instrumental in putting this together with your organization. And just sort of describe, why is it important? If I'm somebody who wasn't a victim of crime, or I don't have a family member, but I'm sort of like, why is it important?
It's important to our society that we recognize that when a crime happens, of course our first concern is public safety. And the arrest and conviction of that criminal, very important. But we should not forget that there is a victim involved. Oftentimes victims, they suffer such trauma beyond what they are able to adapt to, that they can no longer return to their normal life. I have experienced victims who own small businesses, and as a result of crime, were not able to continue with that business. They ended up closing the business, laying off the employees. The state has an economic interest in victims recovering from that trauma, going on to be fully contributing members of our society. Also, they have the human interest. They have been deeply traumatized. Crime causes a type of stress that is beyond anything we can even imagine. They need help in recovering from the trauma. They also, what lies in front of them is years of litigation. They need help understanding what is that about, how does it move forward. The advocate's responsibility is to minimize the victim's trauma. If that means letting the victim know what is next in the criminal process system, what is going to occur in the courtroom that day, what they can expect, accompanying them when they go to court so that they have somebody there with them to support them and to help them, to make sure that their rights, they have 17 constitutional rights in California now. Victim advocates are here to make sure those rights are not overlooked, that that victim gets the information that they are deserving of, the services that they are in need of, and the compensation to help them with their economic losses that they have experienced as a result of crime.
And obviously today's conference focuses on all of that.
All of that.
The title of the conference is
Real Justice, Victims' Rights Delivered. We have declared in our laws many rights for crime victims. California has the necessary laws. Where we fall down is in the enforcement of those laws. Today's conference is to talk about how are we going to enforce the laws that already exist. How do we do that? Oftentimes in the criminal justice system, the victim's constitutional right may not be in agreement with the defendant's constitutional right, and finding a true balance between those two. And so we are focusing this conference on what are we going to do to deliver these rights that have been so long declared. Some of these rights have been in place since 1982 and are still today not really enforced. So we are working towards bringing attention to the fact that crime victims have rights too, and those rights need to be enforced. It's part of the victim's recovery. If they are not enforced, the victim feels re-victimized, re-injured by the system itself.
And that's really important because a lot of people I know have sort of this idea that you're just sort of thrown to the wolves, so to speak, if you're a victim. You know, you have to testify, and they're not really sure if they're going to get any support, and maybe they're just hopeful they have family members there, and that type of thing. There's also people that, Sally, I know you've been involved in this a long time, and you have responded to lots of different events. So tell us just sort of what has been your experience in working in this field and sort of why you're doing it.
Have been doing it now going on 12 years and am very blessed and fortunate to have landed in the victim witness arena. I think for me, I have learned so much from the advocates, from how their commitment to those victims. And for me personally, one story I would like to share is one of Catherine's colleagues who in 1980, at the age of 21, had a stalker that was after her, who'd kidnapped herself and her fiancé, took them out into the nowhere land, and proceeded to murder her fiancé in front of her, shooting her in the head, and bullet went through her head, thinking she was dead as she played dead because she knew he had one more shot. So I have a feeling he was telling her this, but she pretended to be dead. He fled the scene, and somehow within her, she was able to survive, to get into her car, find joggers, and proceeded to tell them the whole story because she was afraid she was going to die.
Wow.
Ended up, they transported her to the hospital. Well, that was 1980. That was before victim witness programs came into being. So for her to understand the criminal justice process, she ended up going to school up at Humboldt State to find out criminal justice. What is it? To know the language, because she was on her own. Luckily for her, the district attorney was very involved. Fast forward, 30 years later, she is now the director of the program. Every year for National Crime Victims' Rights Week, as you showed the video a while back, throw flowers into Humboldt Bay in memory of those victims of crime. I've personally thrown a flower into the bay for Randy. I never met him. But Joyce's professional life has, in memory of Randy, her personal life is in memory of her husband, for her husband and her family. So out of tragedy has come something remarkable for all of us.
It's interesting how these stories, I mean, that's an incredible story. It puts everything into perspective for you.
Absolutely.
You know, you think like, well, I don't know what effect I have, or I don't know if I can really do anything. But then you learn of a story like this and you meet people, which is so critical here, is they're meeting other people who have similar stories or have friends that have gone through it. And these stories are what inspire and compel beyond all odds.
I think for our agency, as the funding agency, sometimes wonder what is the impact in the field. And it's when our program specialists are out in the field and they're meeting Catherine, her staff, and the stories that come forward and the resiliency of these victims of crime. But I think it's really important in that the dollars that support this program are not from taxpayers' money. They are fines and forfeitures levied against criminals on the federal level as well as the state level. So
it's the offenders that are paying for this.
It is the offenders that are paying, absolutely. And the advocates play such a critical role in bringing that victim, making that victim a survivor on all levels of our agency. You know, from the victim witness, the domestic violence, the rape crisis, and particularly the children's programs. So the dollars are very well spent on our return.
So, Catherine, tell me, who is involved with your association that's represented here? This isn't maybe just 2 or 3 groups. There's a lot of diversity in that room.
Our association, the membership of our association, is all of the victim witness programs in the state of California. And they are all represented here today. Also represented are some nonprofits that are shelter-based for domestic violence victims, rape crisis centers, programs that provide treatment services for children who have been victimized. So all of victim advocacy is well represented here today.
And so how would somebody, so not necessarily everybody from those organizations are here, and we talked about this a little earlier, is even though they may not be here, they can get involved, and perhaps they're watching the video after the fact, or they're watching now live because they didn't make it up here. That doesn't make them any less important or any less involved, in fact.
Oh, no. In fact, most of our membership programs have sent certain representatives here, and they will be taking back this information, and we will share it with other advocates. And it also helps the advocates, I think, to understand that while they are day-to-day under usually a quite large caseload, an advocate has in our office an average caseload of 100 at any given time. And so the ones that are here learn that they are a part of something bigger, that there are other advocates out there doing the work that they're doing. Victim advocacy can be, in some ways, very hard on you emotionally. We visit victims often. I have been to the hospital many, many times and had my first contact with a attempted murder victim while they are still in ICU, or sat with families who have family members who may not survive the gunshot wounds, and sat with them in the waiting room outside of ICU. We start with victims at that point, and our job from there on is to try to minimize whatever trauma they're going to have. I've had parents say to me, if my child dies, I don't have any money for the funeral. What am I going to do? Our service can begin right there to help with that.
So I'm thinking in my mind, I know some folks who, absolutely passionate people, they really want to help, but they also not necessarily have the capacity to sort of deal with the issue. You know, some of these crimes, a lot of them are so horrible that just the people hearing about them, it's traumatic to them. How does somebody get involved that says, oh, I don't know that I could sit and listen to a story, but is there some other way I could get involved?
Sure. For example, in Ventura County, we use volunteer staff. They come to us, they want to help. They go through a 40-hour training, and in that 40-hour training, we train them to do one thing: help domestic violence victims obtain a restraining order. And then they go about that work. That's very important work. It's preventive work. They don't need as much training as advocates who are working criminal cases, And if not for those volunteers, we would not have the capacity to help those domestic violence victims who probably have not reported to law enforcement, aren't going to report to law enforcement, but need a safety plan. Those volunteer staff help those, mostly women, obtain those restraining orders, develop a safety plan, maybe find a shelter bed for them, those kinds of services. We do have other volunteer staff who are not ready to work with victims, but we have needs that are of a clerical nature.
Sure.
We file claims for victim compensation with the state. District Attorney Ramos mentioned that program. Our volunteer staff in that regard will help file those claims, follow up to make sure the claims are approved and are paid. So there are many, many things that they can do, to help the advocates so that the advocates have more time to spend directly with the victims.
It sounds like the volunteers are the lifeblood of the organizations that are helping.
It is, because Victim Services has been terribly underfunded since its inception and continues to be. If you were to take a look at the history of the funding of crime victim assistance throughout its life, you would find that it is absolutely flat, that there have been no increases. And so we have to find ways to get the job done, and volunteers help us do that.
That's great. Sally, your program there's a lot of tentacles to your program.
Absolutely.
Maybe describe some of the various things that you offer and what you're involved with.
Sure. Yeah. We have the Victim Witness programs, where there is a program in each of California's 58 counties. In addition to the Victim Witness, we have what we call the Unserved, Underserved Populations program. And that is a national program, and it's for those crime victims within a region, it may be economic, that are deemed unserved, underserved. In Catherine's County, it is the elder population.
Yes.
For example, in Santa Barbara County, we have a Oaxacan from the state of Oaxaca. We have indigenous tribes here in California that do not even speak Spanish. They have their own dialect. So there's a lot of nuances. We have Southeast Asian community programs here in Sacramento. They speak 11 languages. The one advocate today told me she spoke 4. LA Gay and Lesbian Center. So we have extremely diverse. You look at California, how diverse we are as a state. We also have those programs that represent some of the diversity. Catherine indicated that funding has been flat. We receive the money on the national level as well as on the state. So we try to do the best we can. We try to leverage those resources to the extent possible. Also within our section, we have tribal grants, and those are violence against women in Native American communities. California has the largest tribal population than any state in the nation. People don't realize that.
Yeah, that's a group of folks that are as equally victimized as anybody else. Just because it's a tribal nation doesn't mean they don't encounter the same sort of things everybody else does.
So that program speaks directly to the violence against women in tribal communities. So we're very eclectic. I also have some Children's Justice Act, which is CJA. So those are the children's programs. And we have an excellent training, human trafficking of minors, that has been taken out statewide. So I am very blessed to have landed in the position I'm in, and the support from the agency is incredible. As you saw today, we have many of our leadership here, and they are committed, and they support the crime victims. And we are only as healthy as our weakest person in the community. So if you look at those people having been victimized, these types of programs are really the lifeline. And I want for the general population, if you haven't been a victim of a crime, that's wonderful. But we have an obligation as a community to really watch out for our neighbors, our next door neighbors, so they don't have to go see Catherine or programs like hers, and have that vested interest. You remember when you were young, and if you got in trouble, your mom probably knew before you got home. And I think that's how we are. And helping lessen the impact of crime, but there are so many opportunities out there for volunteers. not necessarily in a direct one-on-one program, but even getting engaged for Victims' Rights Week. What's out there? Because
Right.
everybody has somehow been touched.
Yeah, I think in some way or another you are. You know somebody, it's that 6 degrees of separation, and
Yes.
just, it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, it's get involved, help other people out. You never know when you might become the victim of a crime and you're going to need help, and so it's just the right thing to do. We're going to show a video from Denim Day, and can you just kind of walk us into that? What's Denim Day? And this was from the Capitol. What does it mean?
Sure. Thank you. Right now?
No, tell me what Denim Day
Oh,
is.
Denim, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm waiting for the video. Okay, Denim Day, I believe it was back in 2000, the Italian Supreme Court reversed a decision on a woman that had been sexually assaulted. And the reason they reversed the decision was because she was wearing tight jeans. She had to assist in unzipping those jeans. Therefore, her violation was deemed consensual. As a result of that decision, it spiraled throughout Europe and the United States. And this day is Denim Day. You wear your jeans to work. We had members at the Capitol in their jeans. We had elected officials going to court in their jeans. Everybody, it's wearing jeans just to bring that to light, that sexual assault is not consensual, regardless of what you're wearing. And so what they do is the event at the Capitol is bringing that to the forefront. That's what you will see.
That's great. So let's go ahead and roll the video from Denim Day this year, 2012, at the California State Capitol.
Introduce the Undersecretary from California Emergency Management Agency, Mike Dayton.
Well, thank you, Ellen. Thanks for all your leadership. And I just wanted to give you a round of applause and your staff a round of applause for bringing us all together today. So I also wanted to thank all the members of the legislature for coming out. You've been great partners in this effort, so thank you very much for taking the time. I also wanted to, just tell you that it's going to take a lot more than a little bit of rain to dampen our resolve, to take on the small-minded, mean-spirited rapists that prey upon the others. And they really do prey upon others, and it's such a terrible crime that you treat somebody else as an object instead of a whole person. So, and I know I'm speaking to the choir today. I know the members of the Caliema team know this, but so I guess when you're speaking to the choir, you tell the choir to sing louder. You tell the choir to go out and talk to other peoples that aren't in the choir. So that's what I'm going to ask all of you today to do, is wear your jeans in other places where other people aren't wearing jeans, and help us spread this word. So thank all of you for being here today. Thanks, Ellen.
On the website that they're on my left that you can click to find out more information about the different groups. But specifically, how would you recommend people get involved?
Well, our association, the California Crime Victims Assistance Association, has a website. And on that website, there's a great deal of information about victims' rights, about domestic violence, about rape crisis, and there is also opportunities to contact us there. You can also, through our website, link to your local victim assistance program in your particular county. So I would recommend visit the site, link to your program within your county, and then contact them and see what opportunities they have for volunteer work or whatever way you might be of assistance.
And if you become the victim of a crime and you don't necessarily get contacted by one of the advocacy groups, should you tell the police officer? Should you call the DA's office? How would you?
The way that this works, in 2008, the voters passed an initiative called the Victims' Bill of Rights, and it requires law enforcement to advise the victim at the time, at first contact, of their rights. They hand them a card. That card has on it our contact information. If that fails, we receive the police reports. We reach out to the victims. So if a police report has made, one of those two mechanisms will link them to us.
More information about the programs that California Emergency Management Agency has.
Absolutely. I think what you can do is we can go to this website, and if anybody has questions, please send them in. We can then also refer them out if they have a particular area of interest or what programs that we have out there. Sometimes people have not reported, or we're finding victims that are now coming forward. Please contact us. We do receive calls from the field quite often, and then we immediately give a call and talk to the appropriate agency and make sure that these people are getting the services. They are out there. We have incredible programs that are willing to support and help those individuals in our communities.
That's great. And again, you can, on our website, you can click on questions at calema.ca.gov to send us a question. Again, if you're not watching this live, that's okay. We'll still be able to answer your questions. We're also on the discussion board on Twitter at CaliMA. So we encourage you to get involved, find out more information. This is an important program. What's happening today is just the beginning. So if you're one of the advocate organizations who may not be involved today or want to get more involved, we're going to refer you to the right people to get you the information you need and to get involved, because obviously having everybody involved is critically important when it comes to supporting victims and the aftermath after a crime occurs and having to go through the process. So Sally Hencken with the Victim Witness Section at CaliMA, thank you very much. And
thank you.
Catherine Duggan, you're the president of the California
Crime Victims Assistance Association.
Crime Victims Assistance. I get it all mixed up. All these acronyms. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I'm Kelly Houston, and you've been watching CaliMA Live.